One of the people that Trump is trying to deport is Mahmoud Khalil, who was a Columbia University student, who was the spokesperson for a very controversial group on campus called the Columbia University Apartheid Divest Group. And that was the group that took Hamilton Hall hostage, committed tons of property. I mean, we showed the video on Monday, but I mean, less people forget. It was extremely riotous, broke the windows with hammers. They threatened Jewish students. They didn't allow Jewish students to get from A to B on campus. We could go down the list, but very controversial stuff. And he was their spokesperson saying, you divest from Israel, Columbia, or you get more Hamilton Halls. That's how this is going to go. Now he wants to play the victim. And the left is only too happy to help. He's got some 19 lawyers representing him for free. Well, he decided to write a letter, guys, dated yesterday. It's long, but I'll read just a couple highlights. My name is Mahmoud Khalil, and I am a political prisoner. I write to you from a detention facility in Louisiana where I wake to cold mornings and spend long days bearing witness to the quiet injustices underway against a great many people precluded from the protections of the law. Writes about how he was allegedly accosted, along with his wife, by the DHS agents. When he got to 26 Federal Plaza, I slept on the cold floor. He's obsessed with the cold. He should go back to Syria. It's very warm there. He's going to be much happier. In the early morning hours, agents transported me to another facility in Elizabeth, New Jersey. There, I slept on the ground and was refused a blanket despite I'm telling you, the man, he shouldn't be here. The Northeast in March is no place for Khalil. My arrest was a direct consequence of exercising my right to free speech. He talks about how he's born in a Palestinian refugee camp in Syria. My unjust detention is indicative of the anti-Palestinian racism from both the Biden and Trump administrations, etc. Okay, he says they're determined to support Israel with weapons to kill the Palestinians, blah, blah, blah. He goes back to the racism. President Shafiq Armstrong, he's talking about Columbia authorities, and the dean laid the groundwork for the U.S. government to target me by arbitrarily disciplining pro-Palestinian students, arbitrarily, he says, and allowing viral doxing campaigns based on racism and disinformation. Columbia targeted me for my activism, creating a new authoritarian disciplinary office to bypass due process and silence students criticizing Israel. That sounds just like Columbia, doesn't it? And then he ends it by saying the Trump administration is targeting me as part of a broader strategy to suppress dissent. Visa holders, green card carriers, and citizens alike will all be targeted for their political beliefs. This comes as a U.S. District Court has just decided that they will not let this case be heard in the Southern District of New York, which is what Khalil wanted, nor will they let it be heard in Louisiana, which is what the DOJ wanted. They will have it be tried in the District Court in New Jersey, which was the government's fallback because they brought him to New Jersey after detaining him in New York. So it's sort of a split the baby situation, but I think the Trump administration is going to be happy with New Jersey over SDNY, which is pretty far left. Your thoughts on whether he has been detained because of racism and Columbia worked to set him up and deprive him of his right to free speech, guys?
Well, it's preposterous, but it's the political views you'd expect of this guy. At least it didn't use the word that some have used to describe his detention, which he's been taken hostage. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that might have been his wife's statement that was read from the courthouse steps last week, which is just perverse from people.
But not read by his wife, interestingly.
What's that?
But it wasn't read by his wife. It had a woman. Everybody thought that was the wife. She read the wife's statement. It wasn't the wife.
Yeah. The statement was from the wife. It was read by someone else. But these are people that torn down flyers of pictures of Israeli hostages who've never said anything about Israeli hostages, who were literally, pulled from their houses, their beds, their children, held in dungeons. They're not just cold, right? Heinous acts of violence being perpetrated against them. And this guy, who is an immigrant to the United States, as Marco Rubio has eloquently stated, has no right to be here. Charlie can speak to this fulsomely, by the way. If you're an immigrant, a legal immigrant on a visa, tourist student visa, or even a green card holder, you are obsessed if you're a normal person, with abiding by every single law and rule. You don't want to park on the wrong side of the street because what might happen to you. And this guy, there's a cognizance of guilt, right, Megyn? He said, well, I don't go in the media very much because I'm an immigrant here and I might get in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble because who knows what could happen, right? And it's happened. So it's entirely on him. And it kind of ties back to the first segment on the trans issue. In the military, you don't have a right to be a member of the military. And you don't, as a foreigner, have a right to be in the United States. So I'm sure it's not pleasant to be in a detention facility in Elizabeth, New Jersey, but he brought this on himself. And this is something, I think it's a bit of a close call, but I think ultimately another theme in our discussion today will be based on the determination of Marco Rubio that it's against the national security interests of the United States to have these protests creating a false image of what we are and what our priorities are. And he was a leader in that effort. So goodbye.
I think you called that the King's card in your discussion with Andy on his podcast, Rich. That's well said. That's despite all the debates over the laws and the rules and the way you can deport somebody, et cetera, Marco Rubio has this ace in the hole, which says there is an explicit statute saying the Secretary of State can deport you if he thinks you pose a reasonable threat to the foreign policy of the United States. That card has been played on Mahmoud Khalil. It's over. And no one cares how cold he is without his blankie. He took the campus of Columbia University hostage and acted as a spokesperson for the group that was threatening a lot more mayhem, Charles. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it was actually charged as a crime by Alvin Bragg. What he was doing very much looks like extortion and conspiracy under the criminal law to me. And you don't even have to prove that. All you have to prove is Marco Rubio made a reasonable determination.
I think Marco Rubio's reasonable determination will prevail here. I do suspect this might take a while, though, because there are a bunch of complicated questions that will gum up the works. One is whether or not what he engaged in was speech. I think a lot of it was not, but half the country thinks it was. And then there's the fact that he has become a green card holder, and a green card holder is a U.S. person. They can still be deported, but the criteria for deportation is much narrower. And of course, he has an American wife who is pregnant, and I think she's 8 months pregnant. So in 1 month, he's going to be the father of an American citizen. No, well, it isn't in that it's going to gum up the works, though, I think. But I think Marco Rubio's
here we go again, C squared. Let's do this. It's irrelevant. It's something that they use to pull on the heartstrings of the judge, but it has absolutely no legal relevance that you're married to an American or about to have an American baby.
Well, it doesn't in that we've been discussing some judges who are bad and who are willing to put themselves in the way of the Trump agenda based on flimsy pretexts. And until you meet a judge or a panel of judges who is not doing that, then this is going to grind on. I mean, I think it could take a year as it winds its way through the system. And I think some of the questions, and we'll find out who's right, I suppose, but I think some of the questions that are going to be litigated here are what constitutes the rights of a U.S. person, which is a green card holder, whether it matters that he was a U.S. person after the various actions were taken.
Well, no, but I mean, of course, U.S. person is a term of legal art, which you know, but it's not synonymous with American citizen. It's not. I mean, you're not allowed to get public benefits. You're not allowed to vote. There are all sorts of rights that the three of us have as American citizens that he doesn't have.
Correct. But for example, and I'm not actually arguing with you here, even if I sound like it, but for example, a U.S. person is allowed to own a gun. I know this having been a U.S. person before I became a citizen. You can own a gun. And the Supreme Court has ruled that right of the people to keep and bear arms applies to U.S. person. So there will be a judge. I promise you this. There is going to be a judge who looks at this, says the First Amendment supersedes Marco Rubio's argument, and that as a U.S. person, he is protected. There could be a judge in all of his activity.
I just think it's going to be gummed up for a while. One of the reasons the Democrats and the left are getting all these favorable rulings is because they're judge shopping. They're making sure that they file these cases in the most leftist jurisdictions that they possibly can, and trying to get a good judge. That's why they wanted this case with Khalil to stay in the SDNY. It's why they're thrilled with Judge Boasberg. Judge Chung, who just did the USAID ruling. All these people are left-wing appointed judges, and so they're thrilled. But unfortunately for them, we have a Supreme Court that right now is 6-3 with the conservatives, notwithstanding Chief Justice John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, who's been slightly soft. So we'll see how she does. But I think in the end, I feel like Coney Barrett will do the right thing. I don't know about the chief judge, and that's a 5-4 ruling in President Trump's favor on, I think, most of his agenda, which will be ultimately upheld. Okay, let's keep going. That's Khalil. He was not held because of racism. He was certainly not held because of some discrimination by the Columbia University administrators. Good God. You don't go out and buy a life jacket when the boat is already sinking, and you don't buy gold when the economy has already collapsed. Clearly, others are heeding this advice as gold hit all-time highs already this year. It's not too late for you, too. And you could have Birch Gold help you diversify into physical gold. Birch Gold specializes in helping you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold for no money out of pocket. One recent 5-star review said Birch Gold was, quote, knowledgeable, helpful, non-pressure. Get your free info kit on gold by texting the letters MK to the number 989898. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, just text MK to 989898 and let the experts at Birch Gold help you secure your future today with gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.